On today's episode, the host of the Strength and Speed podcast, Evan Perperis. Welcome to the OCR Report podcast. The OCR Report is the live stream home for the sport of obstacle course racing. Become a member at patreon.com/the OCR Report and help us ensure OCR is here for the next 100 years. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the OCR Report. Welcome back to the OCR Report podcast. Thank you for listening. You are too kind. My name is Will Hicks. You can email me, will@theocrreport.com. Follow us on Instagram @theocrreport. Subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/theOCR Report. And become a member of the OCR Report. If you appreciate the podcasts or the live streaming, or if we as the OCR Report have brought you value, we would love to have you as a member. Start as little as $5 a month. Support the sport you love. There's a link in our bio on Instagram, or go to patreon.com/theOCR Report. Today on our show, Evan Perperis. Evan is the host of the Strength and Speed podcast. He is an author for the OCRreport.com. He is also a book author, a prolific book author. He's written about a book a year for the last 8 years or so. We talk about all the books he's written in our chat here in a few minutes. And he has a new book coming out. A new book, you can find it on Amazon. You can pre-order it right now. Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must. Tiga Tactics, Runner, Walker, and Hiker's Guide to Self-Defense. Comes out September 30th, but you can pre-order it now on Amazon.com. We have a link in our bio. Actually, there will be a link in the show notes. If you want to, literally go buy it right now while you're listening to me talk. Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must by Evan Perperis. New book. Very excited to talk with Evan about that. We also talk about a lot of other stuff. His travels, what he's been up to, and kind of his calling it a new career is probably accurate technically, but it doesn't feel right. Like he's studying to be a priest in the church. But halfway through the conversation, we talk about that. It's interesting. I enjoyed our chat. Evan is the newest member of the OCR Report team. He's been making content for the sport for years, and we've kind of been loosely affiliated for a minute, but he's on board now and officially, and we're happy to have him. Very excited to welcome Evan to the OCR Report. Before we talk with Evan, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
You can leave a review for the show by going to lovethepodcast.com/OCR. I have a link there for Apple Podcasts, for Podchaser, for a couple other places. Leave a review for the show. If you listen on Spotify, which I know a lot of people do, all you need to do is just literally click the 5 stars button on the home podcast page. Spotify does not, at this point, let you leave written reviews, but you can leave a rating. Rating and reviews. Ratings are the stars. Reviews are the written part. There's a fun fact for your morning commute /run /doing the dishes at night. What are you doing right now while you're listening to the podcast? Shoot me an email, will@theocrreport.com. I usually listen to podcasts while I'm running, sometimes while I'm driving. Usually when I'm driving, I like to listen to music. It's more of a run or folding laundry, maybe, for podcasts. Look, not every story is a banger, okay? If you leave a review for the podcast, I will read it on a future episode. You can do it on, I gave you the link. I'll do it again, though. lovethepodcast.com/OCR. You are too kind. A couple other things going on I want to let you know about. We're in the middle of 6 straight weeks of live stream coverage. Go to youtube.com/the OCR Report and check out our latest race. This weekend was the Spartan Pan Am Championships. Last weekend was the Savage Pro race in Maryland, first race in their series. Before that, Deca Fit, Florida. Next week, Midwest OCR, kind of our local race spotlight. And then coming up, OCR World Championships. That's like 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away. 3 weeks away, OCR World Championships. So stay tuned, youtube.com/the OCR Report, the live stream home of OCR. And again, that is all made possible by our members. Special thank you, special shout out to our OCR Report members. You literally don't know the impact you guys make, the importance you are to the sport. You make it possible for us to live stream. You make it possible for, even right now, we're in the middle of 30 days of podcasts, 30 pods in 30 days, 30 podcasts, half September. And a special thank you to the OCR Report members for making that all possible. You can become a member and like become part of the team, like help support what we're doing. Patreon.com/the OCR Report. We all love the sport, right? Like, and you can be like on the field competing, or you can be like in the stands watching. And we would love to have you, on the field with us as part of the team. I mentioned 30 pods in 30 days. Have you been listening to all of the podcasts? Today's day 15, literally the halfway point, 15 of 30. If you listen to this podcast and the other 14 before it, you are halfway through 30 podcasts, half September. A new podcast every day of September from the OCR Report. So new podcasts from the OCR Report podcast, which you're listening to right now, Obscuring Adventures, World's Toughest Podcast, OCR Talk, Fran and Carlo get OCR adjacent, Nitty Gritty Training, Strength and Speed, Evan Perperis, who you're about to hear from today, and Travels with Jack Goris. Travels with Jack Goris was actually yesterday's new episode. He talked about, Jack is our photographer. So he goes to a lot of races, literally all over the world for us, taking pictures. You can find all the pictures on the OCRreport.com and a selection of them on our Instagram page at the OCR Report. Jack, as not a sideline, but in addition to taking photos for the OCR Report, he also travels to Ukraine and does war photography. And you can find some of those on his Instagram page, Images by Jack. And he talks about, on his podcast, he talks a lot about the traveling part of it. Like, it's basically a 2-day deal to get from his house in the U.S. to the front lines of Ukraine, the front lines of the war in Ukraine. And I don't want to spoil anything, but if you want to listen to his new podcast, it's not explicit, but it's like mature subject matter. Like, he talks about some serious stuff that he sees over there. So, Images by Jack is his Instagram. Travels with Jack Goris is the name of the podcast. That was day 14. Today's day 15, talking with Evan Perperis on the OCR Report podcast. Tomorrow is a new episode of Obscuring Adventures with Mike and Caitlin. And they've been cranking out weekly episodes for 7+ years. So if you haven't listened to them yet, you should give them a listen. And then we got tons more. The 8 total, the 5 other that I didn't mention. World's Toughest Podcast. Got new episodes from Strength and Speed. I mentioned it with a conversation with Evan here in a minute. Evan talked with World's Toughest Motor Champ Trevor Psychos a few weeks ago. And Trevor just wrote a book. I'm looking around my office here as I don't have it in front of me. But Trevor wrote letters to his grandmother while he was deployed overseas in the Middle East. And he wrote them to his grandmother so that his family would go see his grandma and his grandma to read the letters to them. Anyway, check out all those podcasts. I'm going to read them one more time. Actually, I'm not going to read them one more time. What you can do, go to the OCR Report Instagram page, click on the link in our bio. We have a Spotify playlist where you can literally just subscribe to that playlist, and every day you'll get a new podcast from the OCR Report. So today, the OCR Report. Tomorrow, Obstacle Running Adventures. Tuesday, World's Toughest Podcast. And Wednesday, OCR Talk. And so on through the week. Every single day, month of September, 30 new podcasts. Very excited about 30 podcasts, half September. It's time to talk with Evan Perperis. Let's go to the phones. Evan Perperis is the host of the Strength and Speed podcast with obstacle course racing lessons from other sports. He's an author for the OCRReport.com, as well as 7 books about the sport of OCR. His new book, Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must, Taiga Tactics Runner, Walker, and Hiker's Guide to Self-Defense, comes out on September 30th. It is available for pre-order now on Amazon.com and the OCR Report Instagram page. Evan Perperis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Well, it's always good to see you.
So, Evan, I was doing a little research, and we were actually talking before we started here. I did not realize you have written 7 or 8 books now on OCR and fitness. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's aggressive. I lose count sometimes. Legitimately, I'm like, how many do I have? And then one of them is one of them I redid. So the new Strength and Speed Guide to Elite Obstacle Course Racing. So if we count that one, it would be up to like 9.
Sure.
But long story short, I basically do 1 a year. So I'm simultaneously working on usually like 2, sometimes 3.
Sure.
And then by the time I edit and do all the other processes, it takes about a year for me to get it out.
You have a job, you work out, you run races. How do you make the time for writing books?
I just kind of squeeze it in where I can. I like staying busy. I did, as a professional soldier for most of my life, I went on a lot of deployments where I sat around and watched movies, a lot of bootleg movies. And when I would get back from deployments, I'd be like, man, I didn't accomplish anything in between, obviously the work on the deployment. And I just got tired of sitting there and not doing anything. So I kind of I always feel like I need to be moving towards a goal.
Sure.
So I don't know how healthy it is, but that's the way I live.
What's the end goal? What's the end game for the book writing? Is it just to keep putting out a book a year ish, or is it?
Yeah, so it's I'd say 1, keep putting out a book a year. 2, it provides passive income. So with Amazon, it becomes really easy to write and publish books, and it requires no overhead, and I don't have to do any work. Once they're up on the website, people search Amazon for the topic, and they stumble across my books, and they buy them, and they give me $2. It's literally like coffee money. It's petty change there. But what happens when I decide to write a book and pick a topic, I deep dive that topic. It's like doing a thesis paper every year on a topic. So you learn a lot. So I better myself. I better other people. When I read other people's books and I see things I don't like about them, when I write my book, I can adjust those and change them. So be like, oh, well, this guy talked about this, but I want to talk about this in this way and use these examples. And I think I can cram more information into a book than a lot of other people can.
So I heard something, and tell me if it jives with your experience. It's that the best way to sell more copies of your book is to write your second book and then to write your third book. And then as you keep writing books, it has a kind of compounding effect on your previous books. Have you found that to be the case?
That was kind of my hope, and it hasn't quite panned out that way. I will say my first book, The New Strength and Speed Guide to Elite Obstacle Course Racing, is my best selling, but I also think it has the best content and the most value for your dollar. I was hoping it was going to do that a little bit more, that compounding effect. I haven't quite. I feel like I'm one thing away from one straw away from breaking the camel's back, and then
Sure.
the massive book sales come, but not there yet.
There's something I was thinking about. There's another expression I heard is that if you want to find oil, you need to dig where the oil is. And you and I do a lot of work in the space of obstacle course racing, and there's not as much oil as there would be if we were doing I don't know, maybe CrossFit or even politics or fantasy football, or it's just there's not as many obstacle course racing fans as there are of a lot of other areas. And so sometimes I think about that. I do what we do because, I like the sport of obstacle course racing. I don't really care about, I like fantasy football, but there's other, if I was doing a podcast about a subject I didn't care about, yeah, you can make more money, but I really wouldn't care about it.
Yeah. It's largely a labor of love. If I can get benefits out of it and I can reduce costs for doing the thing that I love, then even better. All right. There's also, I'd say with obstacle course racing, there's also generally less competition. So I don't know. how many fantasy football podcasts and stuff there are, but there's not as many obstacle course racing. There's not as many that are consistently putting out content like the OCR report.
That is an argument as old as time, right? Big fish in a little pond, or little fish in a big pond. Like, that's a great point. And people have debated that for longer than you and I have been around. Speaking of like benefits, you've had some cool experiences because of obstacle course racing. You've traveled literally all over the world. I mean, you have for the military, but also literally all over the world for obstacle course racing. In fact, the pro team you're a part of is kind of focused on that.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's dumb luck or God's providence or what, but I have gotten some amazing benefits. I've been to Lebanon once, I've been to Kuwait twice, and I've been to Saudi Arabia once. And that is all stuff that came as benefits. That's not me shelling out all my own money to get over there. So just some really good opportunities. And honestly, I never went into any of them being like, I'm going to do this so I'm going to do X so I can get Y and then I can get Z. It was just like, I want to be helpful. I want to grow the sport. And I made some connections between the Hannibal race owner, Amin Dib, and like Adrian Bijanata and some other people in the OCR industry. And benefits started coming my way. And that's not why I do things, but again, I just try to be helpful and good things tend to follow.
Yeah, man. Thomas Edison, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It just happens. 100%. Hey, tell me about the new book. It's I'm going to read the title again. Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must. Taiga Tactics. Is it Tiga or Tiga?
Tiga.
Tiga Tactics, Runner, Walker, and Hiker's Guide to Self-Defense. That's the title. What is the book about?
So the Tiga Tactics is a self-protection online self-defense company started by two cousins. They hold like 12 black belts between the two of them. I started training with them online in addition to a lot of the in-person training I did. And then I went to a couple seminars, and basically kind of like with obstacle course racing, they were nice to me. I was nice to them. All of a sudden, I'm at one of their seminars and they invited me up to like help teach through like my background in the military and some of my training in martial arts. And I started looking at where those intersection points overlap and where I can be of value. And I took my running experience, took my martial arts experience, and kind of made a bridge between the two. And I used Tiga Tactics model for self-protection, which is like very simplistic. So it's not, years of training and decades of work. They take their decades of work and they condense it down to like, all right, if I get punched in the street, here's what I'm going to do. And here's my immediate response. And there's something, speaking of Will Hicks, there's something called Hicks Law. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am not. Tell me.
Oh, the Hicks Law. Okay. So Hicks Law is basically when you have too many options, your brain processes slow down because now you're trying to weigh each one instead of being like, if A happens, I'm automatically doing B and doing it violently and aggressively.
Sure.
So essentially, that's what they use. They use Hicks Law. So they reduce the amount of options you have and give you simple solutions. And in the book, I talk a lot about situational awareness. I talk about a lot about what you're wearing, how you're presenting yourself as a target, essentially, and not only like the mental side of training, but also the physical side. Like here's how to throw a punch, a knee, an elbow, etc. And then lastly, they use tool set. So here's what you can carry to enhance your self-protection. So I really like their methodology because it applies not only to life and obstacle course racing, but self-defense, right? So their pyramid of protection is mindset, which basically means your mind needs to be ready to go. Skill set is like what you can do. And then tool set is like what you're carrying. And if I buy the cheapest pair of running shoes from Walmart and give them to Ryan Atkins, he's still gonna beat our ass on the obstacle course, right? Because he's got the mindset and he's got the skill set. And just because his tool set is not very good that day, not going to be a problem for him.
And you and I both know a lot of people show up for World's Toughest Mudder and they've got the tool set taken care of. They spent the money, but that's the easy part, right? Like anyone can go pay $200 for a pair of the best running shoes, but it doesn't guarantee you 50 miles or 75 miles or even 24 hours. I need to talk to old Uncle Bartholomew Hicks and see about that law he wrote. That's pretty interesting. Something that I never thought about when I was out running, and it's kind of a blind spot, is safety out there. Because like I'm a guy, and I usually put one headphone in just because of cars, maybe. But I think the ladies that are listening might have way more experience in not feeling super comfortable sometimes when they're out on a run. And it was a few months ago, I had my very first experience, and literally I'm in my 40s. This is the first time I ever felt uncomfortable on a run. I was out, like literally out in the middle of nowhere, probably
30 minutes from people, and I'm on a trail run, just minding my own business, one headphone in, and this group of like 4 or 5 guys walking on the trail, coming the other direction. They're not out there for trail running. They're in like jeans and like boots, and like they're not in running clothes. They're not in hiking clothes. They're like just in like neighborhood clothes. And I'm like, I don't know why they're out here. And I'm like, I could probably take out 1, maybe 2 if I got lucky, but like there's like 4 or 5 of them. Like, and there was nothing happened. I went my way. They went their way. We passed on the trail. Totally fine. But I got that vibe that for just a second, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, my safety all of a sudden became a concern. And that's literally never happened to me on a run. And I know that like, I'm fortunate as a guy. I'm like probably above average size guy. Like I don't need to, and I know that's not the case for everybody who's out there running. So I think this is a good topic for a book.
Yeah. You hit on some key points, some situational awareness, some indicators, right? As far as identifying the threat far away, that's super important. The one, again, if you buy the book, it's going to deep dive into all this stuff. It talks also a lot about setting boundaries, right? Like you need to be able to set boundaries, and not only when you're running or when you're going back to your car. You need to be able to tell people, hey, why don't you mind standing back a couple of feet? Because a nice person is going to stay back. They're going to respect that boundary. Someone with bad intent will keep pushing that boundary, right? They'll be like, you're just saying that because I'm a man. You're just saying that because I'm insert race. You're just saying that because I'm dressed X, Y, or Z, right? They're going to keep pushing that and try to close that distance because they want to close the distance to do whatever they want to you, and then,
and that's kind of an immediate red flag, right? If they're not like cool about the request, like,
right.
My daughter, she said something the other day, like we were somewhere and she just felt nervous about something. And I was like, listen, your safety is way more important than anyone's feelings. Like, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but your safety is far more important. She's 11. So I'm like,
Especially, yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, especially with females. A lot of times they go out and they will not feel safe. And, like you can be like, well, what does Evan, random white male know about not feeling safe? The military and the deployments I've been on, you get a little bit of paranoia from there. And some of it's probably unwarranted. Some of that stuff's a little hard to turn off just because I think about security. Like literally all the time. My job was thinking about security for 20 years. So I still have that. I probably have it above what is probably healthy, but probably what I need it for. But that's kind of the way I look at the world just from training. And I tell some of my personal stories in there as well to help drive some points home.
If you could boil down the book into like 3 main tips for people, like running safety tips, like what would they be? Or maybe just the most important one, like whatever, like if you wanted what's the main thing you want people to take away from the book?
The main thing I'd say, people need to think through the decisions, right? So you need to not necessarily think everyone's a threat, but understand understand what you're presenting, right? Like you were saying, if you have both headphones in and your sunglasses on and you're staring at the ground and someone run past you, that if I was going to attack someone, if I was a bad guy, I was going to attack someone, that would be someone I'd attack because they have not looked at you, right? They have no idea who you are. You can circle back around. When you go for runs, setting patterns, I know people love using Strava, but Strava literally puts a point from your house out onto the road, right? Like you're creating this pattern and be like, oh, but I put on the thing where it blocks out the immediate area around my house. But again,
I know where you live. I know the neighborhood, and
you're following the same route every time, right? So it's stuff that's you'll read it and you'll be like, well, obviously, but I don't do that. Like it's obvious when you sit down and think about it, but most people don't take the time to sit down and think about it. And it's like I use it to compare it to driving a car. When I get in my car, I'm not like, oh, what if I get into an accident? What if my front brakes don't work? What if my airbag doesn't work? I have a plan in my car. I have a seatbelt. I have airbags. I have a car that's been safety tested. I have an emergency kit in the back. I've got a spare tire. I have my phone to call people. I have all these safety things, and then I don't think about it. So if you read through it and you start doing this stuff in practice, it becomes a non-issue because it's already built into your plan. And then when a bad thing happens, you don't have to panic and think about what you're doing next. You've already mentally rehearsed it in your mind, and you just default to one of those plans. That's essentially what we do when we do on special operations for training. We sit down and we contingency plan by phase every single thing that can go wrong. So when something goes wrong in one of those phases, it's like, oh yeah, we talked about this back at the team room and we all decided this was the best answer. So it's not even a discussion. We're just going to default to plan C and we execute. And I do the same thing with World's Toughest Mudder. I mean, I've done enough OCRs, ultra OCRs. I generally know what's going to go wrong, and I generally have a good plan for like what the next step is going to be. And a lot of times it's literally just sucking it up and keeping moving.
Chris Mendoza told me once that World's Toughest Mudder, maybe he was talking about ultra running. It's about problem solving. Like once the day of the race is there, everyone's pretty fit and everyone's, but like once stuff starts going wrong, gear starts breaking, blisters start coming, toenails or this or stomach, whatever it is, like it's about problem solving. Something's going to happen. 100% something is going to happen. And it's about figuring it out when it happens.
I agree. Yeah. Which is also why I recommend my Ultra OCR Bible. It's probably my second best selling book.
So lots of good books. You also host the Strength and Speed podcast. I was listening to the new episode you have with Trevor Psychos. He also wrote a book, which I just ordered.
Nice.
Tell me about the podcast. You've been doing it for years now.
Yeah, I've been doing it for, this is year 8, I think. Basically, I wanted to talk about obstacle course racing, but didn't want to limit my scope. And when I started obstacle course racing, the way I figured out solutions for things, I would just look at other sports, right? Because obstacle course racing is new, fitness is old. The problem I'm looking for has probably been solved by another person in another sport. So I can just steal their lessons learned, and then I'm shortcutting the solution. So that's why I started the podcast. So me and Brenna were the two hosts initially, and we would interview people, just kind of steal some lessons learned. And eventually Brenna got busy with life and went off on her own, and now it's just me. And so I interview primarily OCR people, but I'm okay interviewing power lifters, talk about grip strength or max strength training. I brought in martial artists, talk about mastering complex skills. I brought in CrossFit people, MMA people, like you name it. I think I've got at least one of them on in the past, and I've basically stolen their lessons learned. Speaking of which, I used that to write a book called On Endurance, which takes it basically takes like 120 podcast episodes and condenses the key lessons learned for endurance athletes into a book.
It's really smart. I have 8 years of podcasts. I could do that. I could steal my own material. I could plagiarize myself.
Yeah, plagiarize yourself. It's
you know what I need? I need to go through my old podcasts and do like what do you call it with the not subtitles, but transcripts. Just like edit. Like, I said it. It's my writing. I want to put it down.
That's true.
Do you have a favorite episode or two? Looking back.
I'd say that. So the funniest episode was we asked, at the end of every episode I do, tell me something people would be surprised to know about you. And we had Ashley Samples on, former CTG pro team, and Brenna on. And Ashley told us this story. You got to listen to the episode. It's a story of her when she was, I think, in high school, and she had to go to the bathroom at a Wendy's, and she didn't want to sit on the seat, so she was hovering above it, and essentially she missed the seat. And it is, I have never laughed that hard during a recording. I laughed hard when I did the editing, and then I laughed so hard when I listened to it. Like all 3 times, I was in tears trying to control it. So that would be my funniest episode. But there's been some really like emotional / interesting ones with my godfather. We just passed September 11th as of this recording. My godfather was in the base of the South Tower when the North Tower collapsed, and he survived. Right, wow. Like the next building came down next to him. Smoke everywhere. People literally next to him are dying, and he runs out, picks up a woman who's unconscious, and carries her to safety.
So he survived September 11th.
Yeah,
and then passed away on September 11th.
No, he's still alive.
Oh, okay. Just
yeah.
Said passed away like a week ago.
Well, I'm saying September 11th just passed.
Oh, sure.
That's fine. He's still alive. He's still doing well. Yeah.
One of the best things about having a podcast is it's kind of an excuse to call anyone you want and be like, oh yeah, I got a podcast, and like maybe you have 3 listeners, maybe you have 30,000. No one knows. They're just like, oh, it's on Apple Podcasts. It's a real podcast. Like it's got your name down right underneath it. Sure, I'll be a guest. Like I've called up people that I'm like, sometimes I shoot my shot and it's like, no, we're no. Right. But sometimes, like I got this guy that hosts a podcast about whatever happened to pizza on at McDonald's. Like, because back in the late 80s, early 90s, McDonald's served pizza. It's a real thing. Some people remember it. It's kind of like the Berenstain Bears, though. Like some people are like, no, that never happened. Yeah, no, it did happen. Anyway.
McDonald's used to do test markets, because I remember in Pennsylvania they had hot dogs at one of the McDonald's, and I was like, this looks gross.
Yeah.
And I think they had pizza at that one too.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just like a fun excuse to call up people that like there's like if you were to call someone on the phone and be like, hey, you want to talk for 30 minutes? They'd be like, why would I?
No.
But yeah, they can promote their product or their company or their podcast, their book, whatever it is, like, yeah, people are like happy to talk for a little bit. It's fun.
I completely agree. Yeah, I've used it the same way, and I've also used it to connect with old friends who have been successful in whatever they do, and use that as an excuse to connect with people who I stopped talking to like a decade ago, and we caught up, and it was I don't think I've talked to some of them since I recorded the episode, but it was cool to catch up.
I was doing some series before, and was doing like World's Toughest Mudder winners, and I started noticing in the results, just random race results, a few different people named Hicks. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do a week of Hicks. And I haven't done it yet, but anyway, just like they're like seventh in their age group, but they're running OCRs. So I'm like, hey, anyway, that's in the, put a pin in that one for later. Let's talk about your racing. Like, what are your World's Toughest Mudders coming up in about 2 months? You work with Hannibal overseas and in the Middle East. What's your race schedule look like these days?
So I'm on terminal leave from the military, so I'm not retired technically, but I'm basically stopped working for the Army. And I started a seminary program. So I'm up in Brookline, Massachusetts. So I'll be up here for 4 years, and I then get ordained as an Orthodox priest in 4 years. So I'm still adjusting to the new schedule. I'm getting a master's degree. It's a seminary program. So 4 years I'll be here studying, get a Master of Divinity, and then graduate, get ordained to be an Orthodox priest. So we have stuff like almost every day. So I'm still trying to figure out when is it socially acceptable for me to like skip services and just go off and run some obstacle course racing. So it's really kind of feeling that out. So I'll probably only do like 1 or 2 more races this 2024. World's Toughest Mudder, I'm likely going to Hannibal Race Qatar is the plan. If that falls through, I will. My plan is to go to World's Toughest and do commentary for the OCR Report. I'm 42. My body is started. It's not like I view fitness as a bell-shaped curve. I think I'm on the back of the top side of the bell-shaped curve, and I'm really not interested in riding this down to the ground. My knees hurt, my back hurts. It's I've treated my body pretty harshly for about 20 years, and I think I'm gonna start stepping off the pedal a little bit. So I'm not officially retired. I will call myself semi-retired.
I think late 30s, early 40s is if you were to chart like max fitness, fitness it hits a peak and it declines, right? But also like intelligence, it hits a peak and then it declines also, right? But I think if you're looking for like a cross point where they meet at the highest point, late 30s, early 40s, I think that's the sweet spot. Like I think I'm not sure the science behind it. I don't know if it's been tested or whatever, but that's my theory at least, and I'm rolling with that at least until I'm in my 50s. So
I like it. So I'll probably you'll see me on the race course here and there, mostly in the Northeast. I don't plan on traveling much for the next 4 years, and then by 2028 I will officially retire.
2028. Okay, save the date. So tell me about like you're in school.
Yeah.
Are your fellow classmates like in their 20s? Like, are you the old guy in class?
There's one dude who's older than me. One dude's 47, and then everyone else is like low 20s. So yeah,
Do they look at the two of you like, what are you guys doing here?
A little bit. Most of them are like, oh, I think I look a little bit young. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I look a little younger than my actual age, mostly because I'm physically fit, and I'm thin, and I currently don't have a beard. So a lot of them they'll be like, "Oh, you were in the Army? How long did you serve for?" I'm like 20 years, and they're like 20 years, and they're like 23, and you're like, that's kind of interesting. And then just the transition from like special forces operator to priest, I think some people find is unusual.
That's kind of going from one extreme to the other, right? It seems like.
Yeah, I mean. It feels very natural to me. There's still like in the church, the Orthodox Church, there's still a hierarchy. There's still like ranks. There's still a code of ethics. There's a lot of rules and stuff like that. So it feels pretty normal to me. And you're still like when I joined the military, I wasn't like, I want to go just kill random people. That's not like why I'm joining the military. Like I joined the military to protect people. And when my body or when the Army won't let me protect people anymore, I will take my services elsewhere. And the older I get, the more I can affect people, I'd say ethically, spiritually, more than I can by kicking down doors. So
I have some friends who are Greek Orthodox. Is that the same as Orthodox? Are they similar?
hey, I'm at the only Greek Orthodox seminary in the United States.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll ask them if they know about it. How has your military training influenced your seminary training?
It's mostly discipline based, right? So I mean, just the military is all about discipline and structuring time and things like that. So that helps as far as like studying for classes and getting things ready. And then a lot of you have to make ethical choices down range in Iraq overseas. Sometimes you make the right choice, sometimes you don't, and you're gonna have to live with the consequences one way or another. So when I was actually overseas, I'd say I was less spiritually. I didn't like lean on my spiritual side very much, because we would like raid people's homes, and I didn't want to have to like weigh the moral, ethical decisions of having to pull the trigger. I was more spiritual, I'd say, during training courses, when there's like a higher probability of failure as far as like failing the course. So you kind of like take some more time to deep dive and think about that. And a lot of like the military courses have a high fail rate, so you have like time to sit around and think about what's going on with your life. And some of them they would let you bring books, but not they'd only let you bring religious books. So like there were some courses like at Ranger School when I recycled there, I ended up researching the Bible for several months. So I'd say that.
I would imagine that as a guy in your 40s with decades of real life experience, your outlook as a priest or future priest, it's got to be dramatically different than that kid, 23 that just got out of college. Like, God bless him, but he doesn't have a lot of experience. He doesn't. Maybe he speaks the truth. He doesn't really know what he's talking about behind it, right? Like,
yeah, I think there's benefits and drawbacks to coming in older. I think your sermons might hit home a little more, and you'll be more impactful because you've lived that life, right? And as an Orthodox priest, you can be married, right? So I'm married. I have wife. I have kids. I understand family structure. I understand the commitments that are there. As a younger person, you may not have that. On the flip side, you are generally younger, higher, full of energy. You may be able to connect more with the younger crowd that's coming to church. You've sometimes I look at the 20-year-olds and to me they're more impressive than I am, because not that I was that crazy in my 20s, but like I made some bad choices in my 20s, right? Like I lived a little is what people would say. So I sometimes view them as like spiritually higher, because they were more controlled and more aesthetic from the beginning, versus me going hard left and then hard right.
That's such a good point. Like, I look at my son is 16 and he hasn't, or 17 rather, and he hasn't, made any big mistakes yet. But I look at him and I'm like, man, you have so much potential. Like, if you just stay on this track, like focus on school, we look back and like we made mistakes, but they kind of made us who we are. They're part. You wouldn't. Maybe you regret that it happened, but you wouldn't change it. Because then you'd be a different person. You're like,
right.
I'm anyway. It's it's a great point. You look at them and you're like, no, you're doing better than I am. Like, don't look at me. Like, you're doing great. Keep it up.
Yeah. And then the future of the church is it's the youth. It's not. I was talking about this with one of the older guys last night. He's like, these younger kids are figuring out where they're going with their lives. He's like, me and you, we're figuring out where we're gonna die. And I was like, it's a good point. Like, I'm right in the end of my book. I still got I'm 42. I still got some time, but like, I'm starting the final maybe couple of sections of the book versus their book's just starting. And we did like one of the first days of class, they were like, oh, tell us something interesting about yourself. And I was like, oh boy, where do I go with this? Like,
one time in a Wendy's bathroom.
Yeah. And like we went around the class and they're 20-year-olds and they don't, not that they have, they're just like, their stories were very like mundane. It was just like, I have a dog. And I was like, okay. I was like, probably not the time to talk about Ninja Warrior or World's Toughest Mudder or combat deployments or, the books or the articles or the podcast or the website or the Blegmits or the, insert things, wife and kids. And I was just like, Yeah, I run endurance sports.
Yeah, my favorite color is blue. Like,
Yeah, that's seriously what it was like. It was like different life experiences. But
that's okay. They're awesome. They'll get there. Like we covet their youth. They covet our experience. That's part of the deal. What else you got going on? What else is going on in Evan Perperis' world?
pretty much it. When we came to the school, I went from like a 5 bedroom apartment to a three. I mean, sorry, 5 bedroom house to like a 3 bedroom apartment. So that was a little hard on the wife. Um, but it is like a super cool community. I essentially, with everyone, the students, a lot of the married students live on campus, so it's just a very communal place. Like, so
Sure.
my kids will go outside and I will let my 5-year-old outside and play with like no concerns about anything because there's always adults walking around. There's other kids playing around. It's just a really good community, and yeah, just mostly just adjusting to that and then figuring out where my obstacle course race training and martial arts stuff kind of fits in to a new lifestyle.
So for your obstacle course training, like, do you train at a gym? Do you do stuff at your house? Like, how have you done that over the years?
It's varied over the years. So when I was in the military, I would basically build a gym in my garage, usually drilling holes into the ceiling and put rig grips over there. I would run in and around town through parks and stuff like that. And if I was going to do weight training, I'd do it on the gym at the military base. Most military bases, the big ones, have something called Alpha Warrior rig, which is essentially an obstacle course rig indoors. What's cool about that is no one uses it. I'm literally the only person I've ever seen use it. So I would call it my private rig. And like you'd go in there and people would just be like stretching underneath the rig holds. And you're like, well, now I've got my own private rig. And you just kind of work out there.
Okay, for 1 year in like 2014 or 2013, even Alpha Warrior was doing public events, and I did one in the parking lot of the San Diego Chargers stadium. They had
Nice.
it was like 2 or 3 locations in California. It was Alpha Warrior, and it was like a giant Ninja Warrior gym / playground, and it was like there was money behind it. It was great, super fun, very excited to do it next year. Nope. And I guess their focus since then is like 100% military now. I know Yancey. I think Yancey's done some stuff with them.
Yeah.
So I'm not in the military, but man, God bless them. I'm glad to hear that they're doing stuff. So
I mean, I don't know if they're still doing stuff. They did stuff and they had a contract to put these giant rigs in every gym and at like the major, like one gym at every major base in the US.
Yeah.
So they're everywhere. Are they still involved in some way? I honestly don't know.
man, if they were able to tie in with Ninja Warrior or something, because obviously Ninja Warrior is like the big brand for that style of, like, that could have been a huge thing. I think maybe they would miss their window. I don't know, but yeah, I did it one time, like literally 10 plus ago. It was pretty cool.
Been around the sport for a while when you start saying things like that.
I know. When you think 10 years, you're like, my daughter's 11. Like, I was doing races before my daughter was born. Like,
Yeah.
And it just blows your mind. And obviously, we just passed 9/11, big anniversary every year, 23. I'm like, I remember exactly where I was. And like,
We all did, yeah.
I hadn't even met my wife. My kids did not exist. Like, they didn't exist. My daughter is 11. My son's 17. And then sometimes my wife and I will tell stories about something we did with her brother before she was born. She's like, what? Like, where was I? Like, she gets upset that we left her out. We're like, babe,
Yeah.
you didn't exist. I'm sorry. We would have taken you. Anyway.
Yeah.
Evan, do you have any sponsors or anything you want to plug? Obviously, the book.
Yeah, it's a book, Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must. The hard copy, the softback copy, you can actually order it right now. The digital copy comes out at the end of the month. So I just got to tweak some edits for the Kindle edition, basically. But that's available now on Amazon. Obviously, my OCR books are available. TeamStrengthSpeed.com has all of my books, links to my books, has all my content for all my podcasts. It's got Blegmitz, the only distributor of Blegmitz in the US. And then something else I recently started working on. You know, like I said, I don't like to not be busy.
Sure.
I started doing essentially a Patreon page, but focus on some of like the martial arts and some of the combative stuff I've learned over the years. So like I literally launched it 5 days ago, and I'm just like blitzing it with content for the next 2 months before I start advertising it. But since you're listening and I have an audience, I will plug that. So it's patreon.com/Greek Combatives is the website, and it'll cover everything from striking some grappling, weapons work, and then a lot of mindset stuff like we were talking about earlier. So I've got a bunch of certifications in various bladed systems and other striking systems and some grappling stuff. So just sharing some of those lessons, way to, again, just like writing the books, when I teach, it makes me better at this thing I'm doing because I have to finally explain what I'm doing and I have to make sure my skill looks good. So when I showcase it on camera, that's all together.
Sure.
So that's the other big thing. And then if anyone has any questions about Orthodoxy or Christianity, you're more than welcome to shoot me a message. Or if anyone has any things, I literally go to church twice a day, every day. So if anyone wants me to pray for them, it helps keep my mind focused in church, because sometimes I'm sit there and my mind is just like listing out things I need to do when I get out of the service. So if anyone has any issues, you're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Evan, I've been doing podcasts for 8+ years. This is the first time anyone's ever offered prayer for my listeners. So
yeah, free. It's free and it helps me, helps you. So
how can people follow you on social media and reach out with prayer requests?
So Ultra OCR Man is pretty much everything. So the website, www.ultraocrman.com. It just redirects you to the Strength and Speed website. Facebook is facebook.com/ultraocrman. YouTube is youtube.com/@ultraocrman. Instagram @ultraocrman. So it's all the same. You can hit me up there or the Strength and Speed website or webpage. And then quick shout out to Mudgear Hannibal Race Pro Team as well. My race content is dropping down. The Mudgear Hannibal Pro Team guys are still doing great stuff, and girls. Jamie Harianopoulos just won Savage. Kevin Thompson was just on the podium at Savage. Vivian Tran has been doing great all season. We had like a fairly large turnover of athletes in the last year. Just again, people phasing out of the sport and people coming in, and we'll probably phase out a couple more people, and I'll probably phase out in the next year or two. And just the goal is to keep the pro team going, because the idea was to make it, not necessarily to make it so this can be my full-time job, because like we were talking about, the oil is not there, the money's not there, but finding a way for athletes to save money at least and do the thing they love at a little bit cheaper. So, we hook them up with races occasionally and gear and stuff like that and supplements, and we've got various sponsors to support. So head over to check out OCRProteam.com and you can read all about them. You can read all about our sponsors, and if you're fast and you want to be on the team, I guess hit me up and we'll see if there's a spot for you next year.
There you go. Evan, any last thoughts before we go?
Just thanks for keeping everything going well. The OCR Report's been doing great. I always enjoy your guys' coverage when I'm not physically out on the course racing. So keep up the good work. This is a long game, so keep plugging away.
We're wrapping up, obviously, but I didn't even mention you have officially joined us as part of the OCR Report. Very exciting. We announced it like a week ago, but thrilled to have you on board. You've been writing for us for, I want to say years. That might be true, but a long time. And so welcome. It's good to have you on board officially.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be part of the team.
Evan Perperis, thanks much.
All right. Catch you later, Will.
Special thanks to Evan Perperis for appearing in this episode. Well done, Evan. Come back anytime. Don't forget, go to our Instagram page at the OCR Report. Click the link in our bio. Top of the links there is a playlist on Spotify. All the playlists from 30 podcasts have September. So it's an easy way to find all 8 of them. You can subscribe to each of them individually. But if nothing else, listen to them all and leave some reviews. We'd love to hear from you. Check out the races, youtube.com/the OCR Report. If you want to see OCR race coverage, that's your place. Become a member, patreon.com/the OCR Report. Shoot me an email, will@theocrreport.com. Sign up for our text program, link in bio, looking for deals. Get a watch, new pair of shoes, something like that. And every purchase you make supports the OCR Report. Amazon's like, oh, the OCR Report sent you. Well, we'll send them a little thank you payment. So thank you, Jeff Bezos, for supporting the sport of obstacle course racing. Tune in tomorrow to Obstacle Ring Adventures, and all month long, 30 pods in 30 days. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.